Hey everybody, Jyotsna here, and my students like to call me Coach Joe. And my passion is to help students reach their maximum potential and create a stellar college profile no colleges can refuse. And we all know how academics is a very, very important ingredient when it comes to college applications, right? And we see students struggling in AP courses, and specifically some of the very hard APs that are AP Physics, 1C, and everything. And that's why I invited expert who has brains from head to toes, who's super intelligent, who's a very passionate tutor, who has been creating such good impact and transformation in a lot of students. So I would like to introduce Alan Tsao. Go ahead, Alan.
Hi, thank you for having us. Thank you for that warm introduction. Yeah, my name's Alan Tsao. I used to be an electrical engineer. I do this full time though, teaching primarily physics, a little bit of calculus, but primarily AP physics. I spend a lot of time really thinking about how to improve and focus on student success when it comes to the AP physics. I love the class. I love the material. It's just something I just really love to see my students enjoy and succeed in.
Excellent. Excellent. Alan also has a wonderful YouTube channel where he shares a lot of information. And yeah, and basically, could you tell us, Alan, why is it that AP Physics 1 is kind of the hardest or one of the harder APs?
Yeah, it's a great question. So you have to understand how one of the big things that happens is you have to understand how I learned physics, how it's very different now. I explained to students when I took physics, I took a high school, like a regular honors physics class. I took what we called AP Physics B, which was an easier version of AP Physics than AP Physics 1. And I took mechanics in college. And you will find anyone over the age of 25, the teachers, anyone out there right now, when they teach physics, they learned it this way. All three classes taught mechanics, same thing, motion. I did kinematics 3 times. I did forces 3 times. I did work and energy 3 times. Okay. But that's not, and that's how almost any tutor or teacher now, that's how they learn physics. They learn by experience. What's happening now, the trend is students go straight into AP Physics 1, much more difficult than the AP Physics that I took, and they're expected to have mastery in that 1 year, whereas I took 3 years. And so it's a very different teaching style. It's a very different way you have to work, because how I learned physics, how your child's teacher learned physics, was by experience. I had three classes of homeworks, 3 classes of quizzes, 3 classes of tests, right, to get good at it. The kids now in AP Physics 1, they do not get that. We can't cram 3 years of work into 1 year and expect them to succeed, but that's actually what's being asked of them right now. And so that's probably the biggest challenge, is that a lot of teachers, sometimes you'll see them say like, well, you got to practice more problems. They don't have time to practice the number of problems. They're never going to do the number of problems that I had to do to be really good at mechanics. They're never going to do as many problems as their teacher did to get good at mechanics, because they just don't have the time. They're very busy students, because you're working, you got college applications, you got extracurriculars, you got so much going on that I literally had someone tell me, they said like, physics not hard, you just need to do 4 to 5 hours of work every day and you can get good at physics. And I was like, that is not something that any of my students are going to be able to. If that's the bar, if that's what's required to do well in physics, no one's going to be successful in that. So that's probably the fundamental problem, is the expectations are much higher. I think it's good. I think students have a lot of different things to learn. It's too much to say like, well, you need to take it three times to get good at it. No, we just need to change the way we teach it and the way we present it and how we help students so that they can learn it much faster than the way we learned it.
That makes so much sense. That's so true, right? It's either sometimes parents over-engineer it, right? Or students. And I think the fundamental problem is the course selection being under the control of parents and students and not making the right prudent decisions, right? It's become a rat race. And they don't understand that they're playing around with education by not having the fundamentals. They're really going to struggle, right? And I see that pattern emerging where the parents put these children into these classes. And when the students are struggling and failing, they don't get the sympathy or empathy. They're told they're not very smart, and they're literally punished for the decision that the parent made, right? So I find that extremely hard. And
It,
yeah,
it's sometimes the parent, I get that too. Sometimes the schools don't offer anything. Like they just like junior year is it's either no physics or AP, like a regular physics class or AP Physics 1. It's like the only option. Like they've gotten rid of like an honors physics. They've kind of like, there's a lot of schools that have just kind of gotten rid of it to try to push the APs earlier and earlier. But I agree, it's sometimes it's like it's a big ask of students to gain mastery in that short amount of time. Yeah.
yeah, that's sad. Yeah. And also, Alan, could you please tell us which area do students struggle most with?
I think the biggest thing is when students are approaching a problem, okay? Because you have to think physics are all word problems. So if your child ever said like, I like math, but I hate the word problems, then I like physics. So physics is all word problems and scenarios. The biggest challenge that the students face is, where do I start? How do I begin this problem? I don't know where to begin. And that is that's it's difficult because AP Physical is so integrated. All the topics are so connected. They're not just like separate units. They all interconnect very closely. And so they really like struggle with like, I do not know how to begin this problem. And that might sound obvious, but a lot of the solutions are like, well, you got to practice more problems and then you get good at it and then you know how to begin. But it's a circular problem. They don't know how, they don't have the experience. And so they need to know where to start when it comes to breaking out a problem. It's probably the most common question I get asked is like, I don't know where to begin with this question.
I get that a lot. Yeah. Okay. So, what is so unique about your approach? And I know the answer, but I want the parents to hear it. What is special that you're offering that you can? I know for a fact my students have done exceptionally well in AP Physics after coming to you. But what is that thing that you're bringing in that's going to transform the student, get them the results that they desire?
Yeah. So students do have to practice problems. I'm not gonna say that there's anything you do have to do a bit of practice, but what I provide them is a clear blueprint of like when you're learning kinematics and you don't know where to begin, I literally give them steps. I say, these are the steps that you're going to do when you're breaking down a problem. And your goal is to get good at these steps because you don't have the experience to decide what steps to skip and not. And sometimes a teacher will do that. They'll be like, oh, I don't need to do that because they have so much experience solving problems, they know what to do. I like to make the analogy as like if you're learning to bake. When you're learning to bake, what's the first thing you do? I take the recipe. I'm gonna follow that recipe exactly the way it is. I'm not gonna skip anything. I'm gonna do everything that it says. And once you get good at that, then you can start playing around with it. Then you could say like, oh, what if I add this? Or what if I do this? Or maybe I want to add a little bit like, but you have to start with a very clear foundation. So for every unit, I spell out for them, when you look at a problem, this is step one, this is step two, this is step three. In forces, for example, I always tell my students, I want you to hear in my head, you don't know where to start, you're going to start with a free body diagram. I don't care what the question's asking. I don't care if you know why the free body diagram is necessary. You're going to start with the free body diagram. And I even tell them at the beginning, you're going to come to me later and you're going to ask me how to start. And I'm going to tell you this that I'm telling you right now, that you are going to draw a free body diagram. And I have students tell me, they say like, I heard it when I was taking a test. I heard you tell me in my head to draw the free body diagram. So I did it and I was able to solve the problem. Because after that, there are subsequent steps that they follow. But there's like a list of steps. In every unit, I teach them this very clear process, how to break down the problem. Because the thing is like, In AP Physics, they like to ask a lot of different scenarios that you haven't practiced before, situations you haven't encountered before. Every year I do the free response questions from the AP exam. There's always a question in there. It's like, oh, I've never seen that scenario before. How do we do that? How do we get kids to be good at that? Is they have to understand, like, okay, I understand the framework of how I'm going to break down the problem. And that is what really, really like makes a huge difference in the abilities for my students to actually solve problems and answer questions.
Excellent, excellent. That's wonderful. And also, there's a myth among the students that it's not necessary to take the AP test, although it throws like a red flag when a student goes through the course and doesn't take the exam. And also, what people don't realize is getting a score in the AP exam is very important to transfer credits, right? And basically, like really highly selective colleges like Georgia Tech and all, they need at least a 4, right?
Yeah.
So what would you suggest would be strategies that students can take on to ace the exam?
That's a great question. They have to have a good handle on how to answer the free response questions. It's super important. So right now, while we're recording this, as we're a couple months from the AP exam, what I have my students do is take the practice test. I teach them clearly of the free response style types to make sure they understand and to use College Board materials. So AP Physics 1 is evolving. Next year, they're changing the topics. They're also changing the format. It's going to be from 5 FRQs to 4 FRQs. They are changing the style of questions. They're not having a paragraph answer question anymore. They're going to change. There's 4 different FRQ types. So don't use any of the books because they usually don't stay up to date, like the Princeton Review and Barron's and stuff like that. Those aren't good. Look at past FRQs, okay, as best as you can. And those are more representative, and make sure you understand the scoring rubric. Like, understand on an experimental design question, what am I being scored on? What are they looking for? There are certain things that they are looking for every time in that question. Make sure they understand and master that. Same with the paragraph answer, which is going to be phased out next year, but the paragraph answer, what are they looking for? What are the things you're supposed to say in there? Because you're supposed to write 4 or 5 sentences into answering that question. What are you supposed to put in those sentences? What are the things? What are they looking for? What are you going to get docked for? Or same, it's just understanding the scoring details. Another example is on some of the short answers. If you don't know how to do the derivation, what happens is students say like, well, I can't answer the rest of the questions because I don't know how to do it. Well, an important thing is to say like, look, the scoring does not require that answer be correct to answer the remaining questions. You should continue to answer the remaining questions, even if you derive something incorrectly, even if you just made up something on that first part because you couldn't do it. They will still give you credit on the other one. So understanding the scoring, really, really, really key. The other part, understanding the timing of the test. Like I said, the teacher can give them access to the practice test in AP Classroom. If that's the only way to get access to the practice test. The official ones from College Board is through AP Classroom, or students in my program, I give them access to it, but or otherwise they can get it from their teacher. But understand the timing of the test because they have a very short amount of time to do the multiple choice questions, understand the pacing and how quickly they have to move through things.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing such wonderful strategies and tips and everything. And how can they engage you? Is there a specific website that you can share along? We'll put it along with a live session.
Yeah, of course. So you can always either email me or there is a link to a website that will explain all the programs and the details and the options that are available. Depending on the time of year, there are different options that are available because there are things that happen over the summer, there are things that happen in the school year, and then there's things that happen close to the AP exam. So, that's probably the best source. If you're not sure, you can always email me as well, and I'm happy to direct you to what currently is offered and where the program is at.
Excellent. Yeah, we will certainly put your link in the along with the video. So thank you so much, Alan. I really, really appreciate you coming here and sharing such critical, crucial information for students to ace the AP Physics exam. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.